the first time I taught this, it took a year. Okay, so we were on total depravity for at least 4 months, maybe longer. I'm going to be editing the heck out of this and condensing it. But there's so much to be said on the subject, and the reason we spend more time on this topic than all the others is because until we understand who we really are, we continually give ourselves more credit than we deserve. Until we get that, we'll never understand the rest. We won't understand the magnificence of grace. And I was saying, if our purpose is to glorify God, and we will, one way or another, unfortunately, and we'll see examples of that in Scripture, both positively and negatively, how God gets His glory. Stealing that glory from God is awful. It's one of the worst things we could possibly do. And giving ourselves credit for that which we don't deserve credit is stealing His glory. Stealing His grace, when we don't deserve it, that's stealing His glory. So we do those things. We put ourselves constantly in the place of God. Don't believe me? You just say, God says this is wrong. You say, it's not so bad. God says, don't do this. Oh, I didn't really do it. And we do that all the time. So we're constantly putting ourselves in the place of God. God says this is what you should do, and I'm kind of tired. So we do that all the time. So we're going to continue on, and I will edit as I go. So, but we'll keep a flow. I'm on page 24 if you're looking for where we want to be. And what we're going to do is we're going to see the traits Adam passed on to us. Thank you very much. If I asked you, where do Oriental people come from? Where do blacks come from? Where do tall people, blue-eyed people, where do they all come from? The answer has to be Adam, right? So all those traits had to be a part of Adam, which totally dispels any nonsense about race and all the other things. There's one race, folks. It's called the human race. And from Adam came everything, and so you are as much black or Hispanic or Oriental or whatever as I am. So we all have those traits in us. They're all somewhere latent in us, and some manifested themselves to bring God glory in some way. And so we're going to look now at some of the other wonderful traits Adam gave us. So we're going to look at the condition of natural man. How did the fall affect us? First of all, we have bad hearts. And when the Bible talks about hearts, it's talking about the inner person. It's not your heart. It's who you are at your core. What you think. So we look at Proverbs 4:23. It says, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. Meaning, what you are, who you are, comes from your heart. It doesn't come from no place. Something inside of you does it. Jeremiah 17:9. Unfortunately, after saying that, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? So your heart lies to you all the time. Yeah, once again, we trust our feelings way, way too much. I once was in a room full of people and I said, would everybody who's married to the first person they ever fell in love with, raise your hand? I got like 2 out of 50. And what I first said was, before that, I said, would you all remember back to your first love? Fascinating. I wish I could have had a snapshot of their faces, because they all went, this sort of look. They all remembered it. Now, how many of you are married to that person? No. I said, but at the time, you thought this is the one, right? Your heart told you, oh yeah. Oh yeah, this is it. Our hearts lie to us all the time. Our feelings lie to us all the time. And we adjust them if they don't. I feel this way. I don't really want to feel that way. I'm going to adjust it to suit my purposes. And so we do that kind of thing all the time. So It's desperately wicked. It is. It's a congenital problem. You're born with it. Psalm 51:5. Behold, I was brought forth, meaning I was born in sin. I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin my mother conceived me. We're talking conception. We're not even talking birth yet. Conception. You want to know why we're opposed to abortion? At conception, you already, God knows who you are. You've already got what you need to get at conception. Okay? So we'll get in. This is not a referendum on that issue. So David's talking about original sin. So look, your nature. You started out this way at conception. Okay? The wicked are estranged from the womb, Psalm 58:3. They go astray as soon as they are born, speaking lies. Talked about this last time. Do you have to teach a child to be good or bad? Selfish or unselfish? And we're born selfish. We're all about us. And not just because they're hungry and can't feed themselves. No. Proverbs 22:15. Foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. So all life, everything you are, flows from that, and it's corrupt from the start. So in the natural unconverted state, what flows out of a man's unconverted heart? Mark 7:21. For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lewdness, and evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile a man. It is not about nature versus nurture. It's nature. Nurture can make it worse. It can make it a lot worse. It's like pouring water on a flower. Flower's got certain characteristics, but you can make it bloom, you can treat it. So in the right circumstances, psychology will tell you, it's these external influences that, determine who you're. No, you start off this way. And you can take two people from the same neighborhood, one becomes a serial killer and one becomes the president. Same parents. I don't know, I know you have kids, I have kids, you have kids, and you look at them and you think, how did such different people come from the same family, right? It's not like they're all little cookie cutter, all the same. They're not the same at all. And you think, I thought I raised them the same. But it doesn't all turn out that way. So that's a description of us. It comes from inside of us. All these bad things come from inside of us. Just giving a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, secondly, we have bad minds. So we have bad hearts, we have bad minds. Adam's fall affected our thinking. Romans 1:21. And here Paul's describing the plight of natural man. He's not speaking of wicked men, he's speaking of all people. Because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools. I find that word fascinating. The Greek word is the word for moron. And across the street, they talk about coming from moron, right? The tribe of moron. The Mormons. And I just find that fascinating that they came up with that. So the phrase, and their foolish hearts were darkened, means that their inner man, it reflects who they were. Top it off, they think they're wise. And God says, you're not wise, you're morons. You might be smart, but that's a big difference from being wise. So in Ephesians 4:17, Paul says, this I say therefore, and testify in the Lord, that you should, and he's talking to new Christians, you should no longer, meaning you did, walk as the rest of the Gentiles walk, in the futility of their mind, having their understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is within them, because of the blindness of their heart. You're not that person anymore. We'll get into the whole born again thing. And he's saying, hey, look, you're not that person. You don't do that anymore, but that's who you were. So with regard to facts, they could be brilliant, but with regard to wisdom, and there's a reason for that. We'll get into that. So, the next thing is God's evaluation of the highest and loftiest thoughts of unbelievers. This is as good as they can think. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. For it is written, He catches the wise in their own craftiness, and again, the Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, that they are futile. So people, they tell you all this stuff about, oh, I don't believe religion. Again, we'll get into lots of that. Or don't believe this. Or, I can think of lots of people, Carl Sagan, these brilliant people, Stephen Hawking, all these, they know a lot of stuff, but they have a problem. It's a heart and a mind problem. And God will look at them and say, look, you're a fool. You think you're wise, but you're not. You're a fool. And there's a reason for that. And that comes up next. Why? Because the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. And there is no fear of God before their eyes. So they come up with facts and thoughts and whatever, but they don't start where they need to start. They don't start with the fear of God. And that word fear there means two things. Respect is one, and fear is another. Some people say we shouldn't fear God. Are you kidding? I don't know about how you guys were raised, but I was raised by a really godly, wonderful father. Awesome guy. Didn't beat up. He couldn't have been a greater example of a father. But I feared him. I respected him. I also wasn't going to push his buttons. Out of respect first, but fear was definitely a part of it. And you should. This is the God who can send you to hell. This is the God who's going to judge you. To not start with some fear there is foolish. So we have bad hearts, bad minds. Thirdly, we have a bad boss. Ephesians 2, Paul describes, again, he's describing every unbeliever. And you, he made alive, so he's talking to, I want you to listen to those words. He's talking to a new converted Christian. You, he made alive. If he made you alive, what were you? You were dead. Or he wouldn't use those words. You weren't sick. You weren't hurt. You weren't sad. You were dead. And you, he made alive, who were dead in your trespasses and sins, in which you once walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit who now works in the sons of disobedience. Satan. That's who was your boss. That's your boss. That's who you were. You were dead in your trespasses and sins, and you followed his leads. In John 8:44, he says it even better. You are of your father, the devil. Well, okay. And the desires of your father you want to do. Guilty. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in truth because there is no truth in him. He speaks a lie. He speaks from his own resources. And he is a liar and the father of it. He speaks from his own resources. Does that not sound like unrepentant, unbelieving, really smart people? They speak from their own resources. We make it up. We don't fear God. And we're not talking about Satan worshipers here. But we're not done with the bad news yet. 2 Tim 2:26. By the way, if you ever want to know how to deal with unbelievers, I always think 2 Tim 2:22. It starts in 2 Timothy 2:22 and in 2 Timothy 2:26. It's just the part that we're going to use right now, but we'll get to the rest. In 2:26, and that they may come to their senses and escape the snare of the devil, having been taken captive by him to do his will. He's talking about how you preach to unbelievers. You pray for them, hoping that they will escape the snare of the devil, having been taken captive by him to do his will. It can't be much clearer than that. That's who you serve. You serve Satan. The problem is unbelievers think they're absolutely free, don't they?
And they think they're good.
They think they're free. They think they're good. They think lots of things, but they're not free. Here it says they're doing the devil's will. You're doing Satan's will. You're not free. You're captive. You're captive. You feel free, but you're not. If you grew up in a prison and you never saw the outside world, you would feel free. You get to run around in the prison and play and do stuff. From the outside, we look at you and say, you're not free. But from the inside, you feel it. You feel it, even though it's not true. So you have a bad heart, leads to a bad mind, sort of a bad boss. And in Romans 1:29, he gives us a description of what that leads to. Being filled with all unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness. They are whisperers and gossipers, backbiters, haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, unforgiving, unmerciful, who knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only do the same, but they also approve of those who practice them. It's not good enough that I'm like this. I want you on my side. Does that not describe us? Mm-hmm. Because if you fall as bad as I fall, I feel better about myself. You know, it's not just me. I'm not the bad one. You guys are as bad as me, so we can all do this together. I mean, this describes me to a T. I mean, we all want that, right? When you're a kid, you don't want to be the one alone doing something. You want if you're doing something bad, you want to get everybody on your side. It describes gangs to a T, right? Hey, we're all doing it. It's the funniest thing about gangs. They have this moral code. It's just not God's code, but it's a strong code, you know. And it's like, don't mess with this code. It's just the craziest thing. We do that. We do that in every form of life, whether it's good or bad. Don't mess with the code.
Sororities and fraternities, those kids that get killed by the initiation.
Yeah, don't tell, because if we're all in this together and you find this bond of secrecy or whatever, I mean, it's craziness. So, and we love those who do it. Watch, quote, reality TV. I hate reality TV, or what they call reality TV, right? What it is now is, I mean, if you put the life of a godly Christian, a really, truly normal, godly Christian, who just goes to work, does what they do, loves their kids, does all that, it would get 0 ratings. I mean, it's like, this boring thing, why are we watching that? No, I want to see man's depravity in full view. Man, these people are sick. Oh, that's so cool. I mean, a show like The Bachelor, let's just take that. That was on the other day. Okay, let's set a guy up to basically, it goes around kissing all these women and doing all this stuff, and we make it a show. That's not God's plan for how men and women get together. That's not even close to God's plan. And that's a mild one. I mean, that's nothing like what we really see with the most popular one is the Women of Orange County. Those things are awful, and it's all contrived nonsense. I mean, nobody fights as much as these people fight and come back and do it, right?
Or that family has 4 or 5 wives.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, the polygamous guy. Yes. I mean, that's on there. You just go down the line, and they get huge rating. Like I said, the Women of Orange County is the #1. And these people make a fortune. The Kardashians, oh my gosh, they made it into an art form. And we look at this and we revere it as a society. That is beyond sad. It says a lot about us, doesn't it? Yeah, right? It's like, oh my gosh. It's awful. And it was St. Augustine who said, when you see a person who's supposedly a good, upright person, it's just a matter of one lust restraining another. Look, I don't gamble because my lust is my love of money. I give money to this charity and that charity and this charity because my problem is I'm prideful. And I want everybody going, attaboy. And on and on and on we go. That's who we are. So, Paul gives his closing statement to the prosecution in Romans chapter 3. Now, Paul spent the first 3 chapters of Romans. Romans is all about the gospel. His treatise on the gospel. The first 3 chapters are all on this. how bad we are. And he ends with, what then? Are we better than they? And he's talking to the Jews here, and he's saying, are you any better? No. And are Christians, were we any better? Not at all. For we have been previously charged both Jews and Greeks that they are all under the sin. You're no different. You're under sin just as much as them. There is no one, no, not one. I mean, there is none righteous. None. Not one. It can't be any clearer. I mean, people think that the Bible is somehow ambiguous, or it doesn't really say. No, we just don't want to listen. There is none who seeks after God. They have all turned aside. They have together become unprofitable. There is none who does good, no, not one. And we'll talk about that more. Their throat is an open tomb. With their tongues they have practiced deceit. The poison of asps is under their lips. Whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their ways. And the way of peace they have not known. Why? Because there is no fear of God before their eyes. That's us. We're not really afraid of God. Or we wouldn't do what we do. Now the bad news. You ready for the really bad news? We haven't even gotten to the bad news yet. The bad news is our condition is unchangeable by us. There's not a darn thing you can do about it. Ouch.
That may not be the bad news.
That's the bad news. I mean, you're this, and you can't change it. You're stuck. Why? Because you're dead. What do dead people change? Nothing. It's incurable. Jeremiah says, can an Ethiopian change his skin or a leopard its spots? Then may you also do good who are accustomed to do evil? No, you can't. And who can bring a clean thing out of unclean? No one. Job says that. So you're unable to change, you're unwilling to change. In John 3:19, the condemnation is this, that the light has come into the world and men love darkness rather than light because their deeds were evil. That's us. We love it. We love our darkness. We hide it, but we love it. Secondly, man's mind is bad. He can't grasp the things of God. For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. Intentionally. I want you to think about that. God made it this crazy, I mean, think about it. You're developing a plan for the salvation of man. This is what you come up with? Seriously? I'm going to go down myself. I created you, and now I'm going to come down. I'm going to let you nail me to a cross. And that will atone for the sins. What a crazy plan. I mean, there's no way we would have come up with that plan. Why would God come up with the plan? Well, it tells us right here. It's foolishness to those who are perishing. Because smart guys will look at that and go, you're nuts to believe this. You're crazy. That's not how God would do it. You ever hear somebody at the end of a football game, hey, I thank God, they won. And they praise God or whatever. And I always hear this then on sports radio. God has better things to do than worry about who wins the game. They missed the whole point. That's not the guy who's saying that would say it if he lost the game. He's a true Christian. He'd like, praise God in everything I do, win or lose. But I'm praising God because I'm realizing it all comes from God. The announcers don't get that. They're going, God has better things to do. I'm thinking, your God is really tiny. He's this tiny little God. What's he doing? He does everything. Come on, man. He's the creator of the universe. Nothing's too small. No details too small.
Numbering all the grains of sand.
Yeah, all the hairs on your head, all the grains of sand. I mean, he keeps it all in motion. Please. So, you see those kinds of things. You need to get... Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So, and the very thing that would save them is foolish. But the natural man does not receive the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness to him, nor can he know them because they are spiritually discerned. It gets worse. He can't even know them if he wanted to. Can't do it. He doesn't have the Spirit. So he's unwilling and he's unable. In Romans 3:11, there's none who seeks after God because the carnal mind, the natural man, is at enmity with God. He's an enemy of God. For it is not subject to the law of God, there's the part, or indeed can be. Can't be. So that's where you are. So would it please God for you to turn to him? Yeah, sure would. Will you? No. Can you? No. Can't. Besides, Satan enslaves us. 2 Corinthians, whose minds the God of this age has blinded, who do not believe, lest the light of the gospel of the glory of God, who is the image of God, should shine on them. He's blinded us. So we can see. We're dead. Dead men don't think. Dead men don't choose anything. We're dead. And I hear these stories. I don't have my watch with me. Is that what time is it?
10 to 10.
Okay, about 10 minutes, yeah. Okay, so what about our free will? And we're going to spend an entire period of this talking about our will. Let me ask you the question. If a person went out and chose suicide, and they kill themselves, the moment after they're dead, what can they choose? Nothing, right? They're done. They made one last decision. Who committed suicide for us? Adam. Adam committed suicide. God said, the moment you do this, you will die. And I'm passing it down. He committed suicide. We died spiritually. We start to die physically. Right? And Adam he committed suicide, and now we are dead in our trespasses and sins. We're dead. So Adam burned our bridge. Thanks once again. Lost sinners, we don't have it within us. And he says it in John 6:44. No one can come to me, this is Christ speaking, unless the Father who sent me draws him. God has to do something. In John 6:65, and he said, therefore I have said to you that no one can come to me unless it has been granted to him by the Father. There are conditions to this, and none of the conditions are about you. You can't change you, I can change you, but you can't. So, Adam committed it, and really Ezekiel says it. God says this in Ezekiel 36. And this is after he's talking to Israel here, and he has just spent a whole chapter taking them apart, taking Israel apart, telling them that they were the worst of the worst, the scum of the earth. They're worse than Sodom, worse than Gomorrah. They're the worst, right? And then he says this, but I, meaning God, will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I, meaning God, will take the heart of stone out of your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I, meaning God, will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes. And you will keep my judgments and do them. He's saying, look, despite all of that, I can change your nature. I can make you a different person. We call it being born again. If you ever think, if people just think about that term, born again means you were dead. You were once alive in Adam. Now you're dead. And now you have to be born again. What role did you play in your first birth? So why do we think we played a role in our second birth? And we walk around, we strut around like, did you choose to be born who you are? In the country you're born in? With a certain IQ? And you wanted these parents and this? We chose none of that. Yet we walk around like, hey, I really made something in my life. Why aren't you the, mentally dysfunctional black child in Ethiopia who's dying of malaria? That wasn't your choice. They didn't make that choice. Who never gets the gospel? Man, we strut around like, wow, I'm something, huh? And God says, yeah, you're something. Just not what you think you are. And we do it all the time. We do it all the time. So I'm going to jump ahead to Lydia here, Acts 16:14. Now a certain woman named Lydia heard us. She was a seller of purple from the city of Thyatira who worshipped God. The Lord opened her heart to hear the things spoken of Paul. She didn't worship the way she should have worshipped. But she does now. He opened her heart. He changed her. The last part, we're going to talk about Lazarus. Was Lazarus lying in the grave saying, please resurrect me? No, he was stinky. Was he hoping for new life? No, there's no hope. Was he lying there listening for the voice of his Lord? No, he's a dead man, don't hear. So he's there. So who gave him life? Who gave him life? It wasn't him. He didn't do anything. So he's lying there and God says, come forth. Right? Christ says, come forth. And by the way, the Holy Spirit gives him life. Changes his life. Because God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit do everything in sync. Right? It's not like one says, I'm going to do this, and the other goes, I don't know if that's a good idea. It's just that makes no sense. And yet we act like that makes sense. And we act like we're the ones who are in control of it all. So, I am going to, next time, we're going to talk about, if there's one you really want to come to on total depravity, it's next week. We're going to address some really heavy stuff. We're going to talk about who you really are and the free will of man. We're going to look at the will of man and what the Bible says about it. We're really going to dig into that next week. In fact, I could really have gone to that chapter and almost skipped everything we just talked about because it nails it. It nails it. So we'll talk about that next week. So don't miss that. Or we'll have it recorded. So we'll close in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, to steal your glory is a heinous thing to do. And we do it each and every day. Our previous pastor here and I said there, of all of the things we can be absolutely certain of when it comes to Reformed doctrine, it is the doctrine of total depravity. That one we know for sure. The other ones, even if we were somewhat sketchy on those, but we see total depravity in our lives each and every day. We war with you, we fight with you, we know exactly what you told us to do, and yet we chip away at the edges. We're like little children who run close to the waves, and when the wave comes, they run back, and they keep doing it until finally they get wet. That's how we are with sin. We get as close to it as we possibly can, and then we run away, and then we get close, and then when we fall into it, we're so surprised. Yet we tempt it all the time. We love it because it's shiny and it promises things to us. When we look truly into our hearts, we look at this doctrine and we see ourselves. So God, that makes your grace even greater. And as we go forward, we will be thankful for all the other doctrines, for what they show about you and your character, and what you have done for us. We are so grateful for that. We are the worst of the worst because we know you and we still sin. And that is just, we hate our sin. We repent of it here today. And we just absolutely hate it. And we know that as we say that, we're going to fall into it again. And that is just awful. And so, Lord, we pray that you steer us away from those temptations, that we see sin and we run as fast as we can in the other direction. We pray this in your name. Amen.